Hey friends, in this video I'm going to explain to you what information architecture is and show you some tangible examples. But before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more awesome tips on information architecture. Now, information architecture, or IA, is a fancy word for how information is structured on a website or mobile app. And just like how building architects use a blueprint to construct every part of a house, writers create a visual representation of a product's information architecture, which includes features, interactions, and hierarchy. And there's no set limit to size or shape of IA. Technical writers and often UX writers are tasked with arranging content using web and app architecture to be understandable and easy. Finding the optimal structure depends on the different objectives and goals of the user, as well as the type of product or service. And I know that may sound very complicated, but what that basically means is that information architecture focuses on the question of where can I find information fast and easily. To do this, information architecture connects three important elements. The user, who is the person that is looking for information, say details on a particular product. Then we have the content, which is the information itself. And last, we have the context. That's a place with the information. Now let's look at these areas in more detail. The first one is the user. Of course, when you're creating a website or a mobile app, you have to take into consideration your user. And for information architecture, this is also true. And with information architecture, it's very important to focus on who you're mapping it out for, because people look for information in different ways, and people also look for different kinds of information. For example, you might have someone that is looking for a belt and another person that is looking for an address of a nearby coffee shop. Both of them are looking for information, but different kinds of information. An important thing to mention here is mental models. A mental model describes someone's thought process about how they perceive the world around them. And you have to take this mental model into account because this impacts how your users process information. Also, the expectations that your users have from your website is influenced by their experience with other similar websites. Here I am on Amazon's website, and I'm coming to this website with a mental model that's based on me visiting similar e-commerce websites, and it's telling me I should take a certain direction to find what I'm looking for. Now, as you can see, there's many different directions I can take. We have this navigation menu, which has many categories in it. We also have this search bar, and we also have this hamburger menu on the left-hand side. We also have these suggestions right on the home page here. So a lot of avenues that we can take, but my mental model says that one of these paths are going to be the fastest. Now, that mental model may be correct and it may be wrong. So let's say I'm looking for a 16-inch laptop. And first thing I think about is like, hey, well, I see categories here. Let's go to the category that laptops would be in. And I'm looking down here and I find computers. So I click on computers and I press enter. Now, when I do that, I see a number of options. I see laptops, desktops, PC gaming, monitors, all these different categories, and also some intrusive ads. Now, what I do is I click on laptops. It seems like if I'm looking for a laptop, it would be here. And while I'm looking here, I see hot new releases. I see shop by operating system, most wished for, top rated. And for me, I'm looking for a 16-inch laptop. So I'm looking at these different categories and I'm saying, okay, well, I see 14-inch, I see, let's say 15.6 inch. I'm not seeing a 16-inch laptop. So likely I took the wrong path to find what I'm looking for. And I could have found what I'm looking for much faster if I had taken a different path. Simply put, my mental model coming to Amazon's website did not align with their information architecture. Now, it doesn't mean that their information architecture is wrong. I may be one of the few users that uses the wrong mental model. And there might be a much better mental model that most users use when they look for what they want on Amazon. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And let's go ahead and take a look at another example of how categories are separated out within Amazon and how diverse it can be. So I'm going to go back to the home page, and let's say I was looking for pet supplies. Well, I can go to the category, and I'll see the category right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and click pet supplies. And you'll notice that I can shop by pet: dog, cat, fish, bird, small animals. Now, you may be asking, why would dog be shown first and cat and then fish, bird, small animals? Well, the reason is that Amazon has a lot of data, and their data may say that their users spend a lot more money on dogs than they do on cats or fish or birds. And it's not just the number of people who come through purchasing, but it's the average order of that purchase. So there may be just a lot more money spent on dogs, but fewer dog owners. And they use that data to say, hey, we should place dog up front, then cat, then fish, then birds. So lots of data goes into information architecture and how it's designed. And when you drill down to the information architecture, you can really see, especially with Amazon, because of all the data that they have, how they go ahead and lay it out based on the information that they know about their users. And as we mentioned, the challenge is that consumers have limited attention spans. So if the information isn't organized effectively, they get annoyed. Moreover, this is bad user experience and will hurt you when trying to rank on Google. Good information architecture is essential to ranking on Google and bringing in traffic and customers. And it's one of the ways that Technical Writer HQ and some of our other companies within our ecosystem have grown so well. It's because we understand IA. Moreover, many users use Google as a way to get their support questions answered. So ideally, everything from your blog content to even your support questions should be mapped out well with information architecture. And because of Amazon's great information architecture, for example, they rank well on many terms and drive a ton of traffic from Google. Still, we're left with the question of how can we make sure that the content that your users see is relevant to them and it's not overwhelming them. An important thing to mention here is cognitive load. Cognitive load is the brain power that you need to process information. And that's why it is important that you as technical writers focus on always showing only relevant content. So how can we make sure as technical writers that our users only see relevant information? And there are plenty of things that we can do, and it all focuses on limiting information. For example, by using filters, sorting options, or offering our users the option to save the information or compare the information to avoid cognitive overload. And it's important for us writers to also know what information, documentation, and content lives on a website or a mobile app. Otherwise, you'll have no idea of where to start with your information architecture. And you can do that by doing a content audit. When you're performing a content audit, you're making an event of all the information on a website. So you're looking at all the pages of content, documentation, technical writing, and you're grouping them so that you have then a map of all the content that exists on your website or app. And now let's dive into another example of how us writers limit cognitive overload. So let's go ahead and take another look at Amazon. So as you remember, I was looking for a 16-inch laptop and I came to the category called computers here. And I was having trouble finding one that was 16 inches. So how would I go about finding one that is 16 inches? Well, what ends up happening is that Amazon uses a set of filters to ensure that I don't get overwhelmed. And I can use the filters on the left-hand side here in order to find exactly what I'm looking for. And I can choose price, I can choose color, I can choose operating system, CPU manufacturer, display size, which is exactly what I wanted. And I can see 16 to 16.9 inches. And if I really want to get specific, I can filter by many more things as well. And I can add all these things up to one specific search. And that way I can get exactly what I'm looking for. And also I can do it just by clicking on search and typing in what I want, which is just another way of a mental model saying, hey, if you put in the search phrase 16-inch laptop, it's only going to pull 16-inch laptops. So let's try that out right now. So as you can see here, we have 17.3 HD, this one says 15.6, and we have 16 right here, 16 right here. So a little bit faster, right? But this is a bit hard to decipher which one is best. I have to use some filters on the left-hand side again. So let's go ahead and we can filter by customer reviews, we can filter by pricing, and much, much more. And this enables me to limit my options and reduce my cognitive load when looking at all the different things I can go across, but only wanting one specific thing. So if you scroll all the way down, you'll notice how many options there are here. So there's 40 pages of options. That's a lot of different options, but I'm only really looking for one thing. And I see 951 results for 16-inch laptops. And that way, Even though there's so many different options out there, I can just find the one that I want pretty quickly. And that's the benefit of information architecture and filtering, is that I don't have to individually go through all those different options. Instead, I can get to the option that I need and that I want. And when we have looked at this example from Amazon, you might have already unconsciously started to group different elements together in order to create an information architecture that you think is relevant for, let's say, laptops, pet supplies, whatever it may be. And this is ultimately would go into some type of visual hierarchy in order to better understand it. And what that ultimately means is that we group certain elements together and build patterns. And we do that because it makes it easier to find things. Now let's dive into another example of how us writers limit cognitive load. How do we recognize patterns and how do we build groups of elements? Visual hierarchy makes it easier for users to scan a web page or to see elements or pieces of information in relation to each other. So when we go back to the example of Amazon and look at the visual hierarchy on the product detail page, you can readily see some patterns. For example, provides it in this order, and we can see capacity, style, brand, screen size, color, hard disk size, CPU model, and RAM memory installed size. And it groups it together in this pattern because this is a pattern of user intent. So it's a mental model I have coming here that says, I want to know these things about a laptop first. And that's why it puts them in this order. And I can immediately see that it's grouped together, right, for this specific item. And again, that's information architecture on the product page. So it's not just the categories. It's not just how do we really filter down based on over 900 results, but it's also how is the information ordered on pages as well. So lots of different ways to understand information architecture and how it takes place on a website, on an app, and more. Now let's go ahead and take a look at another great example. Now when I look at the Apple example on the product page, I can see the iPhone 13 Pro, the iPhone 13 Pro Max, and I can switch between the two. I can also switch between different colors, and I can also switch between different capacity here, as well as selecting a carrier. So lots of different types of information architecture and how they're presenting information that's really important to me and that I need. And it makes it super easy to get exactly what I want when I'm buying an iPhone. And the way they do it with design is very, very simple, and Apple's great at that. And I go through this experience and I have a great visual experience in finding exactly what I want. And it shows how important it is to group pieces of information together when someone wants to make a buying decision. So that way they can get exactly what they want quickly. They can choose their color, their capacity, and much more. It's important to realize that information architecture isn't black and white. It also takes into account the emotional side of the user experience. It's about creating an experience that is enjoyable or delightful. Take a look at this example from Stripe's documentation portal. It's important that even with documentation that we know how people feel when they read it and how they'd like to improve it. As you can see, Stripe provides many options for feedback to easily enable that. And there we have it. We just went over what information architecture is and a few examples. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, and I'll go ahead and see you in some of our following videos. Cheers.